Hi everyone, Colleen Patrick-Goudreau from joyfulvegan.com. Welcome to Vegan POV. Today I want to address the assertion that hormone-free milk is better for the cow since it doesn't force her to produce more milk than she can handle, more milk than she can express. Here's my point of view. First of all, it's a misnomer to say that cow's milk is hormone-free. Synthetic hormone-free, yes, because cows as females naturally have hormones in their bodies and in their milk. So it's not actually accurate to say that milk is hormone-free. You can't have hormone-free milk. That's like saying you have mineral-free kale. It's just not possible. The synthetic hormone about which I speak, you've heard of most certainly, was first patented by the biotech company Genentech in the 1970s. And so by synthesizing what is a natural hormone in cows, bovine somatotropin, or BST, biotech companies began creating and marketing and selling this artificial growth hormone, or recombinant bovine somatotropin, RBST, and dairy producers give it to cows to force their bodies to produce more milk than they would naturally produce. Now, RBGH hormone has been the center of controversy in the US and has been banned in Australia and New Zealand, Canada, Japan, and the European Union, I believe. Because, though, of the focus on these artificial hormones and the movement to encourage dairy companies to use RBGH-free cow's milk in their products, there's the presumption that once you remove the synthetic hormones from the production process, and thus the final product, you eliminate both human health and animal welfare concerns. But it isn't so. The obscene amounts of milk being mass-produced by cows today have less to do with this synthetic hormone and more to do with gene manipulation and selective breeding. Difficult though it is to imagine, before their fateful encounter with humans, cattle once lived peacefully as free, untamed, undomesticated animals. Because our only perception of and interaction with cattle has been for thousands of years as the property of humans, it's easy to forget that they were once untouched by humans. They were once wild animals. All domestic cattle are descended from a single wild species, the aurochs. Now that species no longer exists because we hunted them to extinction. In fact, the aurochs was the first documented case of human-induced animal extinction. Prior, though, to being manipulated by humans, the aurochs were simply members of the cattle tribe, evolved to succeed for their own sake, right? Nature didn't distinguish between dairy cows and beef cattle. There was a time that we used their descendants for both their milk and their flesh, but eventually agricultural breeding practices began to splinter them off and create specialized breeds depending on our use for them, designed only for maximum production, maximum growth, maximum output, whatever it is we were breeding them for. Now, we've got breeds created specifically for meat, we've got breeds created specifically for their milk, and you don't have to be an expert to know the difference. You can tell by just looking at them. The beef breeds like Angus, Hereford, Devon, the Texas Longhorn, Brahman, these are all bred to have thick, stocky, muscular bodies, which result in thick cuts. While the dairy breeds, the Jerseys, Holsteins, Guernsey, Brown Swiss, these are bred to have characteristics ideal for milk production, high milk production. So they're bred to be machines who can endure, technically speaking, several back-to-back pregnancies and produce great quantities of milk. Their milk output has more to do with their breeding and the size of their udders because of that than it does the use of synthetic hormones. Now, that's not to say that synthetic hormones are harmless, but even without them, dairy cows are bred to produce more milk than nature ever intended. But when it comes to public perception and public dialogue and public understanding of animal-derived products, there tends to be a lot of emphasis on methods of production rather than the necessity of production because they're marketed that way. That is to say, there's a perception that if methods of production were regulated and made humane, then there's no problem, versus abolishing the practice altogether. And because the emphasis tends to be on method, it becomes really easy to not question the practice. So the solution isn't simply to stop injecting cows with synthetic hormones. The solution to animal suffering and human health problems is to stop consuming animal milk that we have no physiological need for. The animals whose milk we take don't drink their own species' milk into adulthood, and neither do we. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like what you've heard today, please give it a thumbs up and perhaps share it with, I don't know, everyone you know. And make sure you subscribe to this channel. I don't know where, right there, subscribe to this channel, and leave your comments below, and support these messages by clicking on the support link below, and of course visit joyfulvegan.com for lots more information about living healthfully and compassionately. And I hope to see you on Facebook and Twitter and G+, and Instagram and other virtual homes. For the animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for watching.